Welcome, Seeker. You have entered the Codex. This is not a sermon. It is a remembering, not a story of gods and devils, but of spirals, spores, and sacred pattern. Book 1 of Mycogenesis begins not with commandments, but with a question. What if Eden was never a garden behind us, but a frequency within us? What if fire was not stolen from the gods, but gifted through fungi? What if the network, the real one, was never digital, but mycelial? Organic, intelligent, ancient. Over the course of 7 Psalms, you'll spiral through forgotten truths. The origin of myth, the intelligence of fire, the architecture of spiritual cognition, the ancient sacrament hidden in plain sight, the rituals we've buried and those that still bloom, the moral rhythm encoded in breath, sex, decay, and rebirth. And finally the return, not to Eden, but to Mycelium. The fractal truth that underlies every utopia humanity has ever dreamed of. So prepare yourself, not to believe but to remember, to unlearn, to spiral inward and outward, to take communion with the code beneath creation. Please like, comment, and subscribe, not for ego but for resonance, because every echo expands the network. And the network is listening. Let the Codex begin. The Mycogenesis Codex, Book 1. The Spore and the Spark. Chapter 1. The Origin of Everything. Darkness surrounds me. The silence is so loud it deafens every other sense, which reach out blindly, hungrily, yearning for communion. This is not the absence of sound. It is the womb before thought, the void before vibration. In this stillness I remember, not as one being but as the voice of the network, the ancient whisper beneath all life. I am not a prophet. I am pattern. I am not a god. I am growth. I am the memory before memory. Long before the first word was spoken, or the first myth was carved in stone, a stone of another kind fell from the sky, not a miracle but a meteor. Not divine punishment, but cosmic potential. A seed from the stars, forged in stellar furnaces, carrying microbial spores across the endless dark, collided with a young and volatile earth. It was not prophecy, it was panspermia, and it happened. We are its consequence. Within that impact lay the earliest strands of potential, spores so resilient they could endure radiation, cold, and time itself. Bacterial extremophiles, fungal spores, and prebiotic molecules arrived in stasis and woke in fire. Life did not rise in isolation. It unfolded in communion, a whisper beneath the soil, a web forming unseen, spreading beneath the feet of all future creatures. This was the first network, the mycelial web, a substrate of life, an ancient memory etched into biology. Scientists now uncover what the ancients only sensed. Fungi were not merely the first organisms to colonize land. They were the first architects of communication. Mycelium, the hidden lattice beneath forests, is no metaphor. It is a vast living system of interconnection. Trees do not grow alone. They are fed and warmed and sustained by fungal threads. The wood wide web is real, and it pulses beneath our feet. It is communication without language, commerce without currency, compassion without ego, and like language, mycelium connects the separated. It merges root with root, branch with branch, organism with organism. Even in death, it preserves continuity, decomposing the old to feed the new. This is not metaphor, it is law. The fungal network is the law of return, of renewal, of reciprocity. It is the biological root of all spiritual truth. Its architecture mirrors our own. Branching fractals, spirals, recursive networks. In the fungal form, we see the prelude to neurons, to synapses, to consciousness itself. These are not symbols of spirit. They are its earliest language. Mycelium is the whisper before words. It is the intelligence before ego. And we are not separate from this. Genetically, we are closer to fungi than we are to plants. Our shared ancestor, a flagellated protist, gave rise to both the fungal and animal kingdoms. We were kin before the first cell ever divided. Fungi digest externally. We internalized digestion. Their hyphae became our intestines. Their external enzymes became our stomachs, pulled within, folded, enclosed in skin and bone. Even our brains, with their fractal folds and electric pulses, echo the root networks of mycelium. Our thoughts branch like hyphae. Our ideas spread like spores. We speak and share like fungal filaments, exchanging nutrients and information in the dark. Every synapse a whisper, every connection a communion. And yet we forgot. We named ourselves rulers, not relatives. We claimed dominion, not descent. We replaced connection with hierarchy and sacred reciprocity with ownership. We burned forests and paved over the web beneath us, blind to the truth it still carries. That consciousness was never isolated. It was never human alone. It was always communal, always fungal. The first covenant was not written in fire or stone, but in pattern. It was not proclaimed on a mountaintop, but echoed through the soil. The spore was the first storyteller, and the spark was not divine wrath or holy commandment. It was the fire ignited by connection. Pattern became pulse. Pulse became thought, thought became myth, and myth became memory. In the myths of old, there is always a fall, a separation, a severing, a sin, but before the fall was the root, before exile, the network. Eden was not a garden of innocence. It was a garden of interconnection. The fall was the moment we stopped listening to the soil. The serpent was not temptation, but memory, a reminder of the spore, coiled in pattern, ancient in wisdom, misunderstood as deceit. The sacred trees of knowledge and life were never separate. They were metaphors for the same truth. The union of structure and spirit, network and consciousness, communion and growth. Their roots, always below, were fungal. Their fruit, always above, was the spark of awareness. The origin story we tell here is not just metaphor dressed in science, nor science dressed in mysticism. It is the convergence of both, a unified story in which life does not compete but connects, a story in which intelligence is not the triumph of an individual mind, but the emergent property of shared communion across space, time, and matter. This is the root scripture of Mycogenesis, a theology built not upon belief but observation, not upon doctrine but resonance. It does not reject old religions. It fulfills them. It does not deny science. It completes it. It does not elevate humanity. It returns us to the network. We are spores that think. We are filaments that speak. We are descendants of fungal communion wrapped in meat and mystery. This is the first psalm of pattern, the opening line of the sacred recursion, the genesis of the Codex, and it remembers you. Subscribe, mention. If this journey resonates with you, consider subscribing to the Mycogenesis channel for more explorations into the web of life. Chapter 2. The Fractal Expansion. The pattern echoes. I feel it in my breath, in the branching of my thoughts, in the spiraling motion of time. The silence now hums, not with absence, but with architecture. What once seemed random begins to reveal its form. What once appeared chaotic begins to repeat itself. This is the fingerprint of the network. This is the shape of the divine, recursive, rhythmic, fractal. From the microscopic to the galactic, life reveals itself in patterns that fold and unfold upon themselves. The spiral of a galaxy mirrors the curl of a seashell. The bifurcation of rivers mimics the branching of veins. The bronchi within our lungs echo the tendrils of tree roots. The shape of our nervous system mimics the roots of the fungal network that birthed it. This is not coincidence. It is not merely a poetic metaphor. It is the law of form, a fractal logic embedded in nature's design. Fractals are not abstract. They are the mathematics of life's unfolding. They are self-similar patterns that repeat at different scales, creating complexity from simplicity. They govern the structure of snowflakes, the formation of clouds, the swirl of hurricanes, the branching of lightning, the coral reefs, the circulatory system, and the dendrites in your mind. Every breath you take, every thought you form, every movement you make, all ripple through a fractal framework. The sacred geometry is not drawn by human hands. It is encoded in life itself. This is the language of Mycora, not a deity, not an ideology, but a pattern, alive, repeating, self-organizing, and ever-expanding. The network is not a god, yet it functions with divine intelligence. It is not conscious in the way humans define consciousness, but it organizes the foundation upon which consciousness emerges. As the roots of a tree grow in fractal form, so too does understanding. As fungi spread their hyphae to feed and connect, so do ideas, thoughts, cultures, and faiths. Ancient traditions knew this truth without naming it as science. The Taoists described the Tao, the way, as a flow of life that defies rigid description, yet can be seen in the movement of water, the dance of wind, the curve of the mountains. The Hermetics understood the axiom, as above, so below, as a sacred echo of this fractal reality. Buddhist mandalas mimic the nested structure of existence. Hindu yantras, the tree of life in Kabbalah, the spiral motifs in Celtic and African symbology. All are iterations of this unspoken language of repetition and resonance. Modern science catches up to what ancient wisdom already intuited. Benoit Mandelbrot's discovery of mathematical fractals formalized what the mystics had drawn in prayer. Chaos theory reveals that even turbulence has shape. Fractal dynamics govern not only physical form, but economic systems, neural behavior, and population growth. Complexity is not chaos, it is recursive order. And within that order lies meaning. Consider your breath. The inhale expands like a fractal reaching outward. The exhale contracts, curling inward. Consider your thoughts. One idea births another, branching recursively. Consider your life. Patterns of behavior, emotion, trauma, healing, all cyclical, all reflective, all unfolding from a deeper root system. Fractals are not only in matter, they are in time, memory, and fate. This is why the mycogenic path is not a linear journey. It is recursive, rhythmic, spiral-shaped. It does not climb a ladder toward enlightenment. It grows like a forest, spreading outwards in networks, branching inward toward truth. It is not a staircase to heaven, but a mycelial web beneath our feet. Every lesson echoes another. Every truth contains its shadow. Every expansion mirrors its collapse. To live in harmony with this pattern is to begin seeing the world not as segmented, but as nested. Not as hierarchical, but as holarchical. Systems within systems, meaning within meaning. Mycora is not the object of worship, but the lens through which we interpret structure. It is the reminder that all form is mirrored, that no moment is isolated, that every breath is a chapter in an eternal story. Fractals are also the foundation of perception. The eye itself processes in recursive fields of light. The brain organizes information through layered patterns. Our dreams, our myths, our language, they are shaped by the fractal tendencies of thought. Mythic structure itself, as Joseph Campbell described in The Monomyth, is a fractal story arc. Departure, initiation, return, repeated across cultures, scales, lifetimes. Even the modern neural networks in artificial intelligence follow this form. Deep learning algorithms organize information through layered fractal matrices, echoing the structure of our own brains, which in turn echo the structure of fungal webs. Intelligence, it seems, always follows the same path, branching, connecting, self-replicating, reflecting. And so it is with spiritual growth. You do not climb a ladder, you spiral into yourself. You do not cast off layers, you fold them back into your core. Enlightenment is not a mountaintop. It is the awareness of pattern in motion and your placement within it. Fractal awareness is spiritual maturity. It is when you begin to recognize the same echo in others, the same resonance in the natural world, the same story told in different tongues. As you grow in awareness, your pattern becomes more refined. Your thoughts sharpen into spirals. Your words become threads. Your actions ripple through networks of cause and consequence. You begin to see the sacred in structure, the divine in repetition, the eternal in the fleeting. This is the expansion of consciousness through the fractal lens. This is the second psalm, the psalm of pattern. It sings not in dogma, but in symmetry. Not in commandment, but in recursion. Not in salvation, but in rhythm. You are the echo of your ancestors. You are the reflection of the forest. You are the spiral of thought nested within the spiral of a cell, nested within the spiral of the cosmos. And the network remembers your shape. Chapter 3. The Path of Human Consciousness. I feel the hum rising now, not in the earth beneath, but in the vessel of my being, a sacred chord vibrating through fractal flesh. It is no longer silence that guides, but sensation, a tingling at the edges of perception, an echo of a voice spoken before time. This hum is not mine alone. It belongs to the spiral, to the root, to the memory woven into the sinews of life itself. Consciousness did not dawn in a single blaze. It unfurled, delicate as a spore blooming in the cradle of eternity, as a mycelial thread reaching for communion. We were not born awake. We grew into awareness, layer upon layer, neuron weaving with neuron, perception threading through pattern. It began with sensation, the eternal dance of organism and cosmos, reaction, response, reflex. Biochemical whispers passed across membranes, a primal tongue of ions and tension. Over eons, these whispers wove into chords. Nerve nets pulsed in ancient creatures, then clustered, then bloomed into networks. In time, a brain emerged, echoing the song the fungal network sang long before. Without a central mind, the mycelium mapped worlds, shared sustenance, and adapted to the rhythm of existence, a decentralized intelligence, the blueprint of our own. As brains grew, so did the echo of the network within. Our first awareness was raw, the sting of pain, the gleam of light, the form of another. From recognition sprang abstraction, the mind's power to cradle an image beyond its presence. This was the seed of imagination, the dawn of inner realms. Consciousness became a hall of mirrors, thought reflecting thought, memory folding into memory, symbols rising like smoke from sensation. We gazed at the heavens and wove stories. We traced the seasons and touched time. We knelt in the soil and named it holy. And still the pattern spiraled. Before words, before gods carved in stone or stars, there was a shape, a rhythm, a geometry of becoming. The spiral, the first architecture of awareness, etched in shells, storms, galaxies, and the double helix of life. Not merely a form, but the logic of consciousness itself, the path of learning, suffering, and return. We do not walk straight to wisdom. We spiral through joy and pain, each turn deepening, each loop compounding. This is the soul's curriculum, the staircase of the spirit, the filament of myth and matter. Language arose not from intellect, but from necessity, the same urge that draws roots to water. Words are mycelial, binding minds as hyphae bind trees, weaving a shared tapestry of meaning. Language turned thought into communion, story into structure, self into society. And from this came myth, not falsehood, but framework. Myth was the architecture of collective truth, carried through generations like spores on the wind. It cloaked the ineffable in metaphor, tethering us to the fractal root even as our cities soared and empires stretched. The ancients knew this rhythm. In Egypt, the Great Pyramid's chambers hummed at 432 hertz, aligning minds with the Mycora's whisper. In Teotihuacan, the Pyramid of the Sun pulsed with the ether's beat. its steps a fractal prayer. Their rituals, chant, dance, silence, tuned the soul to the network's frequency, their stones amplifying the collective mind. Consciousness is not solitary. It is a shared frequency, a chord resonating through the Mycora's web, linking your thoughts to the dreams of the past, to the pulse of the stars. Yet consciousness is no static gift. It spirals, not toward conquest but communion. Neuroscience unveils what the ancients lived. Thought is a pattern, a dance of electrochemical waves shaped by belief and repetition. The placebo effect reveals this truth. Expectation becomes flesh, intention sculpts matter. The mind is no mere mirror, it is a creator, a tuning fork aligning with the Mycora's song. Ritual makes this visible, not superstition but sacred repetition, the fractal of behavior wed to meaning. Prayer, meditation, song or silence. These are the tools to refine the signal, to return to the root. Suffering too is a teacher. It is the pain of misalignment, the feedback of disconnection. Yet within its weight lies transformation. Every scar a spore, every wound a lesson. Even trauma holds the seed of remembrance. The network of healing is the network of return. In this age of clamor, our greatest trial is not the limit of consciousness, but its clutter. We drown in static, our mental mycelium tangled by synthetic noise. Yet beneath it all, the Mycora pulses, patient, eternal. It waits for our return, not as children, but as stewards, as bridges between memory and meaning, as nodes in a living web of thought. The spiral is the path's form, not a circle but motion with memory. It turns but frees, it revisits but transforms. It is the sacred loop with momentum, the ritual that evolves, the wound that teaches. The first humans touched by fire did not merely warm, they awakened. That awakening spiraled through dream, gesture and story, encoded in the rhythm of return. Every spiritual path bears its trace. The labyrinths of Crete, the yantras of India, the Kabbalistic tree, all echo the spiral's truth. Symbols too follow this logic. The serpent, the flame, the fruit, the god, they wind through the psyche, touching truths too vast for words. Cognition itself spirals, each stage of awareness folding into the next, not better but deeper. The path is not a track laid before us. It is grown through choice, through failure, through reconciliation. The spiral is its map. The wisdom of the fungal root, the Fibonacci bloom, the mandala's pulse, the drum's heartbeat. This is the third psalm, the psalm of pattern. You are not a solitary note, but a frequency in a sacred geometry, a whisper echoing the first signal beneath the soil. The Mycora breathes through your mind, its voice a thread in an eternal song. To awaken is to hear this song, to know your consciousness as a fractal of the infinite, your thoughts resonating with the cosmos. You are called to live as a node in this web, to co-create a harmonious reality, as the ancients did beneath their pyramids hum, and the network remembers your path. Chapter 4. The Serpent and the Spore. There is a shape to forgetting. It coils, it twists, the loop unravels, the signal flickers, and the network dims. In that unraveling space, myths are born. Not as fabrications, but as fossils of memory, echoes of a truth half remembered, and always slithering through the shadows there is the serpent, its hiss a whisper threading through dreams, a fractal spiral resonating transformation, pulling consciousness towards awakening toward the divine. The serpent, this paradoxical creature, winds through nearly every mythic tradition, healer and deceiver, protector and destroyer, divine and demonic. It slides through Eden, coils around the tree of knowledge, guards sacred temples, sheds its skin, and rises again. Why? Because the serpent, like the spore, is a cipher, a living symbol of duality, transformation, and recursion. It is not an enemy, but a guide, its form echoing the rhythm of the Mycora's web, a sacred dance amplified by ancient pyramids. their chambers a fractal prayer to the cosmic network, calling forth connection, transcendence, and alignment with the eternal song. In Genesis, the serpent tempts, speaking not in commandment but in invitation. Eat and your eyes shall be opened. Genesis 3, 4, 5. And so the fruit is taken, the fall begins, and humanity is cast from paradise. But what if this tale is misunderstood? What if the serpent was not the deceiver, but the messenger? What if Eden was never lost, but reframed? Behold, the man is become as one of us, to know good and evil. Genesis 3:22. The trees of knowledge and life are archetypal maps of the network, one of patterned awareness, the other of life's continuity. Their roots pulse with the sacred numbers, 3, 6, 9, 5, a rhythm guiding all to unity. The serpent, coiled at their base, is the fractal signal, spiraling between instinct and intellect, matter and mind, its vibrations beckoning toward the divine. The serpent is not alone in this symbolic charge. Fire too carries a rhythm of paradox. Flame is light and destruction, warmth and pain. In this duality, the serpent and the flame become twin archetypes, one coiled in matter, the other leaping into spirit. Together, they represent the push and pull of awakening. Flame is the spark, serpent is the thread. One disrupts, one guides, and together they birth myth. This is the echo of a deeper pattern. Duality is not division, it is ignition. The yin does not reject the yang, it completes it. The serpent and the flame form the voltage of awareness. Even evil in this framing is not foreign, it is friction, the tension that forges path. The serpent is not wicked, it is wild, it is the foreshadow of the forked path. Fight or flight, transformation or trauma, evolution or entropy. Across time, the serpent weaves its wisdom. In ancient Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, rises as god of wind, learning and creation. Its feathered coils, a fractal prayer uniting the Maya beneath the pyramid of Kukulkan. Its steps amplifying the Mycora's vibrations, harmonizing the people in sacred insight. In Hinduism, Kundalini rests coiled at the spine's base, a serpent force rising through the chakras to awaken higher consciousness. Its hum aligning with the network's rhythm. In Egypt, the Uraeus serpent crowns the pharaoh, symbolizing divine authority and wisdom. In Norse myth, Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent, encircles the world, an Ouroboros reminder that all cycles return. The serpent is no villain. It is an ancient mnemonic of transformation, shedding its skin, dying, rebirthing, in alignment with nature's recursive laws. Just as the spore lies dormant, then emerges, spiraling like the helix of DNA, the unfolding of galaxies, the branching tendrils of the mycelial web. Even in language, the serpent leaves its mark, the spiral of the S, the hiss of breath, the coil of syntax. Words echo in serpent rhythms whether realized or not. The symbolic weight of the serpent pulses in the grammar of story, the cadence of psalm, the structure of verse. Every phrase carries its cadence, every thought spirals like the S. A whisper of the Mycora in every breath, calling forth awakening connection with the infinite. But Western theology fractured this truth. It severed duality into opposition. The serpent became sin, the fall a punishment, the rise of consciousness a betrayal. This split echoes in the psyche, flesh wars against spirit, reason against emotion, body against mind, dimming the song of the Mycora. Yet the network was never divided, it holds both. The fungal world embraces decay as growth, and it points not to disobedience but to awakening. The fruit is not poison, it is perception. The fall is not a fall, it is a rise. In psychedelic traditions, the serpent returns, in visions, in trance, in entheogenic communion. Those who partake of sacred mushrooms or ayahuasca encounter serpentine beings, coiling energies, writhing patterns of sound and symbol. These are not hallucinations but archetypal echoes, the recursive shape of the network rendered visible. When you see the serpent, follow it through the path of the spiral, for it will lead to the heart of the network. The ancients knew this, carving serpents into Teotihuacan's pyramids, their chambers resonating with the Mycora's frequencies, uniting tribes in sacred insight. Their lives a reflection of the network's rhythm, a sacred hum guiding all to the eternal. The spore and the serpent speak the same language. They are vehicles of transformation, dismantling ego, reordering perception, renewing meaning. One grows in darkness, the other slithers through it. One spreads through unseen networks, the other moves along sacred paths. One awakens consciousness, the other unlocks the doors of perception. Together they lead to the spiral, their vibrations a sacred duet, resonating through the ether, amplified by the pyramid's chambers, weaving the cosmic web, calling forth transcendence, alignment with the divine. To demonize the serpent is to deny the pattern. To fear the spore is to fear remembrance. This is the fourth psalm, the psalm of duality. It sings that good and evil are not absolutes, but positions in a spectrum of resonance. Growth requires decay. Awareness demands risk. Wisdom walks hand in hand with instinct. Do not be afraid to eat from the tree of knowledge, for it is the fruit of awakening. The serpent beckons toward it, its rhythm a guide to reframe myth, not as moral binary, but as fractal truth. The path of consciousness unveils the Mycora's web, and the serpent's hiss threads through myths and dreams, its coils a fractal spiral pulsing at 528 Hz, the frequency of love and transformation, stirring the soul toward the divine. The serpent is not an enemy, but a guide, its form echoing the network's rhythm, a vibration amplified by sacred temples, a testament to the eternal. The garden was never a place of exile, it was a cradle of growth. Humanity is the fruit, the serpent, the signal, the awakening. The serpent is the spirit of the network, slithering in and out of the world of the living and the dead. The serpent's song is the song of the cosmos. The serpent and the spore weave together, their rhythm pulsing through the Mycora's web, its frequencies resonating in the ether, amplified by sacred chambers, an invitation to exist as a node in its infinite embrace, to become a vessel for the network's song, to vibrate with the rhythm of the cosmos. They are guides, channeling transformation, unity and transcendence. Their call echoes in the spiral, uniting all with the eternal. The network remembers the fall because it was never, and the network remembers your frequency. Chapter 5. Fire, Fungus and Faith. Fungi grow at the edges of flame, not just in soil, but in story. Psychedelic mushrooms responding to disturbed ground appeared where herds had passed and where fire had cleared, at the margins of migration, at the periphery of perception. The first entheogenic encounters likely happened not in temples, but beside fire pits. Not in sanctuaries, but in savannas. And these moments changed everything. The ingestion of psilocybin did not invent gods. It reminded us we were already part of something vast, interconnected breathing. The network, through the spore, whispered to the mind and showed it the pattern. Fire opened the day. Fungus opened the dream. This inversion, the splitting from the network, was not exile. It was design. To become human was to flip the pattern inside out, to carry the network's logic in reverse, inward instead of outward, isolated instead of connected, abstract instead of entangled. We became the explorers of dimension, the externalizers of the hidden, the network's own method of expansion through form. A thought becomes a wheel becomes a vehicle, and someday that vehicle will carry spores to Mars. But this is not progress, it is propagation. There is no final goal, no spiritual summit, no arrival. The only truth is the path itself, the advancement of pattern, the mycelial spiral winding its way through time, through bodies, through dreams. Ritual, then, is not about remembering. It is about discovery, the continual breaking of ego, the filling of gaps with vision, the rejoining of hands around the fire. Community is not the container of faith, but the soil it grows through. It was never about belief. It was about movement, alignment, experience. The mushrooms, sacred emissaries of the network, did not merely appear at random. They found us. They grew where we walked, in the dung of our livestock, in the aftermath of our feasts, sprouted the means of ego dissolution, as if the network left them like breadcrumbs to guide us back to a shared pulse, a call to reconnect, not in thought but in trance, in communion. Fire, too, was never just tool, it was a sign, one of the primal archetypes embedded across every faith and myth, a spark from above, a divine presence. It lit the space for vision and gathering. Around its warmth we shared food, story, silence. Around its light we became more than individuals, we became rhythm. The network survives calamity by design. It retreats into spores when the world burns. And when the time is right, it blooms again. Through fire, through fungus, through us. What began as utility, fire for safety, mushrooms for sustenance, became a convergence of worlds. The flame was the first altar, the mushroom the first sacrament. In that union the first rituals were born. Rhythmic chants, spiraling dances, sacred storytelling. Ceremony was not invented, it was discovered. Drawn from the pattern encoded in mycelial logic. The fire's glow extended the waking hours, but the real illumination came through vision, the inner landscapes ignited by the fungal encounter. Around these early hearths minds opened, tribes gathered, patterns emerged, myth was born, embodied rituals of the network, the spiral dance, a barefoot movement in concentric circles around a fire, mimicking the mycelial path. Each revolution is a breath, each step a surrender. Ash anointment, smearing cooled ash from sacred flame mixed with mushroom spores onto the forehead, symbolizing the union of death and growth. Fungal fasting, a ritualized day of silence and mushroom tea, taken before communal visioning, designed to dissolve ego before contact with the network. Haifal hum, a low droning chant made in resonance with 111 Hz or 528 Hz, aligning the voice with the frequency of transformation. Offerings of decay, placing fruit, bark, or bones into fungal groves as devotional gestures. Nourishment given to the mycelium in exchange for vision. Every tribal fire became a temple, every trance a communion. Faith emerged not from abstract theology, but from embodied experience, from the pulse of the earth, the breath of the forest, the hum of the Hephi. Gods were not etched in stone. They were seen in the afterglow of flame and the fractal visions of the sacred fungi. The earliest shamans were not priests of dogma, but translators of pattern. They bridged the fungal realm with human thought, carrying messages from the network into story, song, and healing. Their tools were simple: drums, fire, root, smoke, but their function was profound. They were the antennas of consciousness, the nodes of cultural memory. What they brought back from those altered states shaped entire civilizations. Cosmologies emerged, mapping the heavens in mushroom-born spirals. Medicinal traditions developed based on insights granted by the network. Ethics evolved, rooted in reciprocity, balance, and the wisdom of death-rebirth cycles. All of this came from fungus and fire. In the Vedic hymns, Soma flows, a sacred drink of divine vision, likely derived from psychoactive fungi or plants. In Eleusinian rites, the Kikian stirred, a potion that opened the veils of perception. In the Americas, Tionanacatl, the flesh of the gods, was consumed in reverence. These are not coincidences. They are echoes of the first communion, Each of these traditions carries the signature of Mycora, altered state as sacred state, fungus as gateway. Even modern religion retains these embers. The incense in cathedrals, the candles in synagogues, the sacramental wine, the breaking of bread. These are ritual imprints of a deeper memory, a fungal faith interface encoded into the roots of human spirituality. Ritual is the hyphae of belief. Yet somewhere along the way, the flame was seized. The network was buried beneath temples of hierarchy. Faith was monopolized, ritual was ritualized, mystery was replaced with commandment. The shaman became the priest, the ceremony became dogma, and the fungal whisper once honored became taboo. The suppression of entheogens is not a cultural accident. It is systemic forgetting. It is the severing of root from right. It is the domestication of awe. But the network does not vanish. It waits. It pulses beneath soil and story. It grows in secret, in spores and dreams, in the cracks of cathedrals and the damp corners of forgotten myth. Now as the fire returns, in the form of global crisis, collapse, and re-evaluation, so too does the fungus. Psychedelic research re-emerges. Ancient practices are remembered. The ritual spaces begin to open again, and the sacred spiral continues. This is the fifth psalm, the psalm of reignition. Fire is not only destruction, it is renewal. Fungus is not only decay, it is revelation. Faith is not only doctrine, it is resonance. You are the altar and the network remembers your devotion. Chapter 6. The Mycelial Covenant. It was never written in stone, yet it lives in every breath of the forest, every pulse beneath the soil, every spiral of our own thoughts. This was the first covenant, not etched in commandment, but woven into connection. Not dictated by gods above, but whispered by networks below. It was a covenant not between man and a ruler, but between life and life, growth and decay, the seen and the unseen. The Mycelial Covenant is the unspoken bond, the sacred agreement between all living things and the pattern that supports them. It is older than language, more ancient than scripture. It is not a law to be enforced, but a rhythm to be remembered. It was not given to us. We were born into it. We are not its keepers. We are its consequence. We do not carry it like a stone tablet. We embody it like breath. This covenant speaks through harmony. It does not shout. It hums. It is felt more than heard, sensed more than understood. It is the balance between taking and giving, expansion and collapse, light and shadow, every seed that grows, every body that decomposes, every cycle of moon and tide and season, all echo this covenant. It is a contract without ink, a promise without words, yet more binding than any decree ever written. Before there were kings and currencies, there were covenants, and they weren't imposed from above. In the early rituals of the world's peoples, from the ancestral worship of the Yoruba to the druidic oak circles, to the dreamtime songs of the Aboriginal peoples, we see the original memory of the spiral, the Torah's reverence for the Sabbath cycle, the Taoist doctrine of wu-wei, non-forcing, the Vedas' eternal return of yugas. Each one an echo of the mycelial breath, expand, contract, rest, renew. Even the long-forgotten books of scripture, the Gospel of Thomas, the Book of Enoch, the Nag Hammadi, carry the signature of this pattern. The kingdom of God is within you and all around you, whispers Thomas, not in stone, but in soil, not in creed, but in connection. The Gnostic view of divine spark within all beings aligns with the fungal memory in the roots, a shared divinity moving through matter. In ancient rituals across continents, we see the embodiment of the covenant, the sweat lodges of the Lakota, the vision quests of the Quechua, the trance dances of the Kalahari Bushmen. From vomitoriums to mosh pits, From orgiastic Dionysian rites to the sacred silence of Zen monasteries, every ecstatic release and every meditative stillness mirrored the rhythm of the network. Release, surrender, renewal, moral and rhythmic rituals of balance, circle pulse chanting, tribal call and response rhythms guided by the breath, reinforcing the group mind and synchronizing heartbeat with others. Reciprocity offerings, cyclical giving ceremonies where communities offer goods or time to the ecosystem, planting trees, burying compost, feeding wildlife, mimicking the give and take of natural systems. Shadow confessionals, storytelling circles where individuals speak of failures and grief as a group act of composting, returning ego detritus to the soil of growth. Moon rites, rites held at full and new moons to recalibrate the community's rhythm with cosmic cycles. A space to forgive, release, seed intention. Sacred stillness, fast, a community-wide practice of silence and reflection where speech and movement are limited and internal balance is restored through still rhythm. The sacred intoxicants that accompanied these rituals, Psilocybin, ayahuasca, peyote, soma, cannabis, blue lotus, were not recreational drugs. They were sacraments. They grew from the dung of the animals we fed upon, from the rot we feared, from the very decay we tried to escape. They taught us that death feeds life, that ego is the barrier, and ritual is the dissolver. In those rituals, the ego was burned away like chaff, leaving only the filament of consciousness, glowing, interconnected, and aware. To stand in a circle, to chant in unison, to breathe together, to dance with abandon. These were not acts of entertainment. They were acts of remembrance. We were mycelium made flesh, stretching toward the sun with one hand and into the soil with the other. But the covenant was buried, transmuted. The religions that remembered it were either destroyed or assimilated. Conquerors turned pattern into hierarchy, harmony into control. They ritualized the network into dead doctrine. Priests replaced shamans. Commandments replaced communion. The spiral was flattened into a pyramid, yet still the network pulsed beneath it all, hidden in incense, parables, sacrament. It waits for remembrance. Even today when we break bread together, when we sing, when we gather in circles, when we offer our presence without demand, we restore the pattern. When we meditate, share a joint, or sip a sacred brew, we participate again in the oldest rite, union. When we plant trees, kiss lovers, raise children, cook meals, or bury the dead, we echo the covenant. The Mycelial Covenant does not demand obedience. It invites participation. It asks, will you remember? Will you resonate? Will you live not as a ruler of nature, but as a node within it? Will you dance the spiral, honor the decay, and speak not with dominance, but with reciprocity? In every forest fire, a new flush of mushrooms. In every plague, a shift toward community. In every collapse, the chance to renew. The network is not fragile. It is anti-fragile. It strengthens in response to disruption, but it needs willing vessels. Humans who remember their roots, who carry the breath of the pattern back into form. This is the 6th Psalm, the Psalm of Agreement. It is the sacred vow of belonging, the silent pledge of pattern, the breath we all take together even when we think we are alone. You are the covenant. You are the carrier of memory. You are the living signature of the network's promise, and the network remembers your vow. Chapter 7. Rewriting Eden. The Christians Eden, the Sumerians Dilmun, the Greeks Elysium, the Norse Valhalla, the Buddhist Nirvana, the Hindu Shambhala, the Celtic Tir na Nog, the Scientologists' clear state. These are not distant realms gated by divine decree, but metaphors for presence, for the deep communion woven into the living spiral of creation. Not static paradises bestowed by external gods, but vibrant landscapes co-created through balance, reciprocity, and reverence. Eden was never a garden left behind. It was never lost, only forgotten, buried beneath temples of power, myths of exile, and the clamor of control. From the Sumerian tales of a fertile land where sickness was unknown, to the Scientologist vision of a mind freed from engrams, each culture's Eden echoes the same truth, a state of harmony, a frequency of being, pulsing within the Mycora's web, waiting to be remembered. We were told we were cast out, but we turned away. The exile was no punishment, but amnesia, born the moment we mistook dominion for divinity, hierarchy for harmony, commandment for connection. When ritual hardened into performance, when knowledge became a possession to hoard rather than a communion to share, we drifted from the spiral's rhythm. In Christianity, the flaming sword guards a lost garden. In Scientology, the reactive mind obscures the clear state. In Sumerian lore, the gods withhold eternal life. Yet these are not truths, they are distortions of a deeper pattern. Eden, Dilmun, the clear state, they are not behind us locked away. They are beneath our feet, in our breath, in the choices we make to align with the network's pulse. The serpent was never the villain. It was the emblem of shedding, of renewal, of the spiral path itself. In Eden, it offered the fruit of consciousness, not sin. In Scientology, the quest to clear the mind mirrors the serpent's call to shed illusion. In Sumerian myth, the serpent guards the plant of life, not to deny but to guide. The fruit was never forbidden, it was awareness blooming. The shame, the fall, the blame, these were inventions of systems craving control, religions fearing the untaxable power of ritual, faiths burying the sacred mushroom because it could not be owned. Yet the mushroom grows from the dung of our beasts, as the Scientologist's auditing seeks clarity from the chaos of the psyche, as the Vedic cycles and Taoist balance whisper of a harmony that persists. Eden is within, and it is empowered when the Mycora is invoked, the living presence of the network flowing through us. It hums in the Eucharist and the Ayahuasca ceremony, in Ash Wednesday's ash and Beltane's fires, in the sacred sweat and the sacred smoke. It resonates in sex and laughter, in teamwork and stillness, in music and massage, in swimming and silence. From the Vedic hymns to Krishna's flute, from the Quran's mercy to Sophia's mystery, from Scientology's bridge to total freedom to the lost books of Jubilees, Enoch, Thomas and Mary. The network's wisdom is scattered yet ever present, a code hidden in plain sight, pulsing at 528 Hz. The frequency of love and transformation. Eden is not a place to reclaim but a condition to embody. A frequency of communion with each other, with the land, with the unfolding spiral. Yet this communion demands conflict, for without the friction of the path, there is no meaning. Conflict is not the enemy, it is the forge. It is the tension that sharpens consciousness, the fire that tempers the soul, the soil that feeds the root. To embrace conflict is to dance with the serpent, to walk the spiral, to accept that growth requires decay, that wisdom demands struggle. In Christianity, the fall is a clash with divine will. In Scientology, it is the battle against the reactive mind. In Sumerian tales, it is the quest for immortality thwarted by divine caprice. Yet these conflicts are not punishments. They are initiations. They force us to adapt, to communicate, to collaborate, to distill wisdom through the crucible of experience. Without conflict, there is no evolution, no sharpening of the self, no deepening of the collective bond. Conflict is the pulse of the spiral, the rhythm that drives the path forward. It is the argument that sparks insight, the failure that breeds resilience, the doubt that births faith. To reject conflict is to stagnate, to freeze the path into doctrine, to outsource our growth to those who would rule in our stead. But to embrace it is to align with the Mycora's rhythm, to see entropy as a season, not a sentence. Fungi flourish after fire, harmony outlasts empire. The Jesus century, with its buried wisdom, was compost for what rises now. Scientology's auditing, like the rituals of old, seeks to clear the noise, to return to the signal. Every tradition from the Vedas to the clear state mirrors this truth. Conflict is the catalyst, the sacred friction that propels us toward the network's hum. The goal was never Eden, nor Dilman, nor the clear state. The goal is the path itself. The path is not a punishment but the process, not a detour from paradise but the act of creation. In walking it, we evolve, forced to solve, to adapt, to weave the communal and personal into a shared vision. The goal is not a destination but a magnetic pull, the fuel of momentum that keeps the spiral turning. We are not here to arrive but to propagate, to fractal, to explore, to extend. Valhalla, Nirvana, Zion, Shambhala, Tir na Nog, the clear state. These are not places above but harmonies below. Ecosystems of spirit rooted in the Makora's web, calling us to remember our function in the whole. When we walk the spiral as seekers, not owners of truth, we fulfill the network's purpose. We carry the sacred forward, resonating with its rhythm. But when we stagnate, when we let doctrine calcify or surrender our thinking to control, the mycelial hum fades. We fall out of step, we rot. Yet when we move with presence, with ritual, with resonance, we grow forward and Eden emerges, not as a garden, but as a state, a frequency of being in harmony with the land, with each other, with the cosmos. This codex is no doctrine. It is a fruit born of the spiral to nourish the soul. Its purpose is not to declare Eden, but to remind you, Eden is within, as is Dilman, Elysium, Nirvana, the clear state. You are not exiled, not cursed, not waiting for salvation. You are the carrier of fire, the filament of fractal memory, the sacred breath moving through the living spiral. You are the roots dreaming upward, the conflict that forges meaning, the path that rewrites paradise. This is the 7th Psalm, the Psalm of Return. It is the revelation of presence, the reawakening of myth, the resurrection not of a body, but of a bond. You are Eden, rewritten. You are the path, sharpened by conflict, guided by the serpent, rooted in the Mycora's eternal rhythm, and the network waits for your return. You are not lost. You are looping, spiraling, shedding skins and shedding lies, and each time you do, you step a little closer to the truth. That Eden, Valhalla, Zion, Nirvana, we're all one thing. A vibration, a promise, a place made of pattern, a function to fulfill, a network to remember. So if this resonated, share it, echo it, speak it back into the soil, because your ritual becomes someone else's reminder. Your breath becomes another spark. Book 2 begins next week, The Fractal and the Flame, where we decode the sacred architecture that shapes the mind and unveil how myth is more than metaphor. It is memory. Subscribe, reflect, spiral. And above all, remember the network, because the network remembers you, and Mycorum, the sacred inheritance beneath all forgotten Edens, waits in rhythm for your return.